your courage to be here because in the society that we live in today, it takes a lot of courage to say that you're supporting President Trump. And, it's really quite interesting how people have tried to manipulate people and how to intimidate people and change their minds. This has been going on since we've been in America. You go back to the days of slavery. In a lot of the states, there were more slaves than there were owners. So what did they do? They had to divide the slaves. So they told the ones in the house, you're better than the ones in the yard. And the ones in the yard, you're better than the ones in the field. And then after slavery was over, the light-skinned ones, you're better than the dark-skinned ones. And on it went, trying to divide people. Today, they say, if you are a conservative, then you are somehow an Uncle Tom, you're a horrible person, you're a demon. What a bunch of crap, but it's been going on for hundreds of years. And it's really time to put a stop to it. So I am very happy to see that you have the courage to come out. It doesn't bother me anymore because, I only worry about what God thinks. I don't worry about what these other people think. But sometimes people ask me, what happened to you? You changed. I haven't changed. I changed about 35 years ago because, you see, I grew up in Detroit, a bastion of liberalism. They call it progressivism now. They keep changing the name. But anyway, then from there to Boston, a bastion of liberalism. Back to Detroit, and then to New Haven, Connecticut, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Ann Arbor, Michigan, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Baltimore, Maryland, a bastion of liberalism. So I had no chance. I was a liberal. I was way out there. And then I did something that liberals are never supposed to do. I listened to a conservative. I listened to Ronald Reagan. And I said, he doesn't sound like a horrible racist person. He sounds just like my mother. And at that point, I started thinking for myself. And that made a big difference. It made a big difference in my medical career, too. I didn't do what everybody else did. I always started thinking out of the box. How do you solve this problem? And that's the reason that God gave us these complex brains. Your brain has billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections. It remembers everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard. It can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. Would God give you something like that just so that you can be a sheep and follow what somebody else tells you to do? Or to think for yourself? And don't you find it fascinating that so many people say the president's a racist? He's a horrible racist and everything he does. Well, it seems to me like some years ago, Jesse Jackson actually gave the president an award in New York City because he opened so many opportunities for black people. Is that what a racist does? And then when he moved to Palm Beach, he was right on the forefront to fighting the clubs who were not admitting Jews and blacks. Does that sound like what a racist would do? He is the one who finally got the Second Chance Act done. Does that sound like what a racist would do? When he took office, he brought the office of HBCUs to the White House so it could get appropriate attention, more money than ever. Opportunity zones so that people could take this money and direct it to the places where people did not have opportunities before. An economy where you have the lowest unemployment rates for black people in history. And it goes on and on and on. Let me tell you something. If he's a racist, he's an awfully bad one. He needs to go get a lesson from the real racists. The people who look at somebody like you and me and they say, because your skin is a certain color, you have to think a certain way. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And they start calling you names. Those are the real racists. But the president believes that a rising tide lifts all boats. He doesn't believe in identity politics, and that's why he's doing things that work for everybody. And we should be happy about that. And the media, they like to pick on him, any little thing. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. The only one who ever was perfect was Jesus, and they crucified him. So, think about this. And we need to just look at the big picture. think about all the incredible things that are happening, think for ourselves, and be missionaries. Go out and talk to your family, talk to your friends, help them to realize, because see, if all they're doing is looking at certain media, they don't even know about these things that we just talked about that he has done. And so they can perpetrate this horrible image of him being a bad person. It is absolutely not true. I work with him all the time. He's a wonderful person. He's become a good friend. You remember during the campaign when we were having a debate, and I couldn't hear my name. I came out, I stood there, I was waiting to hear everybody else gleefully walk past. He was the only one who stood with me until they straightened it out. That's the kind of person that our president is. He is my friend, and he will be your friend as you get to know him. Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Defining ISIS as Islamic, he was fighting against the uninformed American assertion that Muslims are correctly using their religion to justify violence. Do you not think the rhetoric of defining ISIS as Islamic is in itself problematic in a nation where xenophobia is resulting in material violence against Muslim Americans, specifically when ISIS is taking Islamic religious documents out of context?
Let's see, there, caliphate, that's part of it. Caliph, that's part of it. When you're standing over young girls and you're about to rape them and you're reading from a Quran, don't get mad at me. That's what they're doing. Hey, you can say what you want, brother. That's what they're doing. I don't know. Ask them before they do it. I'm over here in America. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is that why do we continue to want to say, let's not believe what they're saying? Why do we continue to want to say, let's deny history, let's deny all these things that have happened, because we don't want to upset this greater, entity. I have gone over to these countries. I have fought for their freedom. I understand that. And I understand that there is also a contingent that is following a phase of Islam. If you understand the first phase from 610 to 622 AD, from 622 to 628, in those 6-year period, Muhammad led 33 combat raids. The first one started was the Nakhla raid. They are following his tradition. They are following his precepts. When he came back to Mecca, he ordered the beheading of 700 people there in Mecca. I didn't do that. And the thing is that everyone continues to come here and say, don't say that because you upset and offend other people. Well, I want them to be upset. I want them to be offended. So maybe they can join us in this fight so that 9 people in a mall in St. Cloud, Minnesota, don't get asked if they're Muslim or not and they get stabbed. I don't want that happening in the United States of America. I don't want that happening anywhere. I don't want it happening in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And I've been willing to put my life on the line for that. I don't know if you have, but I have.
I'm open to Donald.
Lower paying jobs are the first rung on the ladder. So you can't climb up the ladder until you start someplace.
Donald Trump will get black people back on that first rung of the ladder.
If you're on the ladder here, you're going to climb up more.
Should the Mexicans be allowed to use that ladder to climb the wall?
Most definitely. Not the wall.
Do you have a message for other black people out there telling them why they might want to vote for Donald Trump?
I would say just know that Donald Trump is not going to make you a slave.
He's not going to make
He's
you
not
a
going to
slave.
make you a slave. You're not going to
And
be
you're
back
sure
in the
about
cotton
that,
fields.
Barry?
I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay.
Everybody trying to enslave you. But the main important thing is how much I'm going to get paid while I'm in enslavement, you know?
So you're pro-slavery, but with pay. You're
That's right.
anti-slavery.
That's right.
Yeah, anti-slavery.
Okay. Anyone else pro-slavery here? Donald Trump says he has a great relationship with the blacks. Okay, as one of the blacks, how would you describe that relationship?
The fact that he says the blacks.
The blacks, right.
Means that his relationship is a little skewed because he wouldn't call us the blacks if he really understood where we were coming
Does
from.
it feel like he's in an abusive relationship with the blacks? Are you guys secretly trying to get out of this relationship?
Not at all.
Okay, so how did you guys feel when Trump said he wants to ban Muslims from coming into the country? We don't have any Muslims here.
I'm
right?
Muslim.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding.
And you're going to vote for Trump?
Most certainly.
Really?
Yes.
Would you be opposed to having Trump waterboard you just to get more information about Islam? If Trump came in here and he had to pick one person to waterboard, who do you think he would pick? Rhymes with schmuslim? Let's pretend like I'm your father, okay? You guys are all my kids, and you have to convince me that I should vote for Donald Trump. Okay?
Absolutely.
Hey kids, how's it going? Why are you guys all here? What's going on?
Dad, we're about to vote for Donald Trump, and we need you
Janae,
on
you're
our
so
team.
funny. Janae is always the funniest member of this family. All right, you guys want to go to the movies tonight? What do you want to do?
No, we need you
sorry?
to cast your vote as well.
What are you talking about?
Because we can't just be Democrats because we're black.
That's right.
Wait, hold on. Winston, you believe this too?
I believe her 100%.
Please, come on, what's going on in here? Are you voting for Trump because as an orange American, he's the only remaining candidate of color?
I'm tired of the jokes. Stop the jokes on Donald Trump.
And you guys know I'm a fake journalist, right? What kind of disturbs me in some of these rallies is, you guys have seen this where Trump gets everybody to make a pledge. Have you seen that, where he has them pledge to vote for him? I just want you guys to raise your hand, and we'll just take a little pledge right now. Okay, and just say, I will never tell black people.
There's no chronic surplus. Every time he turns away a qualified black person, he has to have someone who's not black, who's also qualified, that he can hire.
And he may not be able to find that person.
At that price.
At that
and so
price.
therefore the price will have to go up. And so it's costing him. And if he doesn't raise the price, he's going to have to keep his customers waiting because he doesn't have enough people to do the job.
Got it. So this question of the difference between intentions and what emerges.
Yes.
A couple of illustrations from the American experience that you describe in the book. In the American South after the Civil War, whites employed a number of measures to keep down the earnings of black workers and sharecroppers, keep them poor.
Yes.
And yet you write, quote, black incomes in 1900 were almost half again higher than they had been in 1867 to 68, in other words, just after the Civil War, after African Americans received their freedom. This represented a rate of growth higher than that in the American economy as a whole. Just freed slaves improved their material well-being faster than the rest of the nation, in spite of laws intended to keep them down. How come?
Well, it wasn't so much laws in this case, it was agreements.
Agreements, I'm sorry.
And many of these agreements simply fell apart because, especially in agriculture, because as the spring comes in, you've got to get yourself a workforce out there to plow that ground and plant the seeds. Otherwise, there's
You
no
lose
crop.
a whole season, right?
Yeah,
right,
and
right.
so the people who decided they weren't going to stick by the landowners, they weren't going to stick by this agreement. They got the first dibs on the black workers and sharecroppers, and the others had to take what was left over. And they got away with a lot of really terrible cheating the first year or so. But of course, by experience, the guy who was cheated the first year knows that his cousin is getting paid more. You don't need to read about that. You don't need anything else. You go down where your cousin's working.
Got it. Again, discrimination and disparities. 3 decades after the end of slavery, laws mandating racially segregated seating in municipal transit vehicles began to be passed in many Southern communities. This didn't happen immediately after the Civil War. It's toward the end of the 19th century. Municipal transit companies fought such laws. How come?
Yeah, they may have had exactly the same racial views as the people who passed the law, but the people who passed the laws paid no price for it. The people that own the transit companies See, the votes, only whites could vote, but whites and blacks could both supply money.
Right.
And so the incentives were very different from the people who own transit companies than they.
Privilege exists.
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
And where's the proof of that?
All around. You know, I tell people often now, in hindsight, one of the things that I wish I would have been more cognizant of was the white privilege at UCLA that was sitting, you know, right next to me. For Black people, I believe white privilege is something to leverage.
What is it though? I don't see it anywhere. What is it?
Huh?
What is it?
How don't you
For
not
people
see
like
white
me who
privilege?
don't see it.
How do you not? How do you not see white privilege?
Because it doesn't exist. That's
Yes,
what
it does.
So what is it exactly?
Things, I believe white privilege is just the ability just to be free and white and not have the same type of social, economic, and social ills as Black people have to deal with. I mean, there's no white racial profiling. White people don't get pulled over by the cops just because they're white. They have the ability to, you know, show emotion and love to their sons without being emasculated. There's all kind of examples
That's
of white
amazing
privilege.
that you believe that.
Absolutely. Why don't you Black? How come you don't believe white privilege exists? What you see?
Well, because you know, I am Black in color, but I don't have that dark mentality that most Black people have.
Clearly.
I see, she said clearly, I see that white people have the same struggles and things that we have in that.
What type of
they have
struggles
to
do they
make their
have?
marriages work. They have to make their children, help their kids grow up in the right way so that they can earn a living and be independent.
But they also have the majority of
They
their
make
fathers
kids-
at home.
Right,
We don't
and the
have-
reason for that, it's starting to change somewhat now, but the reason for that is because they are taking responsibility for that, whereas Black men and women are not taking responsibility for that, as they did prior to the Civil Rights Movement. Black people are blaming it on their lack of self-control and self-containment. They're blaming it on white people, while white people are working hard to keep it going.
I do
for
believe
themselves.
that there is a need for Black people to be held more accountable.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse racism. That doesn't excuse institutionalized racism. That doesn't excuse.
But there's no
that-
such thing as that.
Yes,
It's an
it
illusion
is.
made
No,
up
it's
by
not.
Black people and their
it's not.
leaders.
No, it's not. It exists.
Well,
Sorry.
where's the proof of it though?
What do you mean, where's the proof of it?
There are many kids who are getting into, Black kids who are allowed to get into these universities around the country, right, based on affirmative action. And because of affirmative action based on their color. That's discrimination based on color, and that's wrong. And these kids are getting in, but they're not earning their way. So when they fail, they feel less than before they were allowed to get in based on color.
I'm a proud product of affirmative action. When I went to UCLA, it was because I was an affirmative action student.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I think I turned out fantastic. So a lot of my peers who were having challenges getting into some of these predominantly white institutions, the affirmative action was great. My father went to Harvard. You know, he was one of very few Blacks.
Was he affirmative action person?
I don't know if he was. That was back in the late 60s.
Well, then he wasn't. He
Okay.
earned his way.
So, that being said, I still believe that affirmative action helped me get into UCLA, and it gave me access.
You would
and
not have
exposure.
gotten in there on your own because you were not smart enough.
I don't know if I wasn't smart enough, but based on the curve and what I was competing with you know, other individuals who had different educational opportunities and teachers. I mean, I'm coming from, you know, the LA Unified School District. I mean, so at the time, I think LAUSD was still pretty good. But I went to all white schools from high school up
So you
through
got
college.
a good education. Why couldn't you get into the school based on your own talent?
I don't know. Maybe because I didn't have some of the opportunity.
But you
first of
had
all,
the opportunity.
No, well, first of all,
You had the same opportunity
SAT,
those white kids were having.
Not necessarily. I had different teachers. I had different
So you went
resources.
to a white integrated school.
I'm talking about
mostly
going
white.
into these other into UCLA. I still had to be able to deal with some of the issues and going to predominantly white schools.
Like
but
what?
I still had to be able to compete.
Like what?
What do you mean, like what?
Some of the issues going to a predominantly
I would graduate from University High School, and at the time they didn't have an African American student union.
An African American student union
At the school.
Well, that's a good thing.
They didn't have one.
That's a good thing.
Why?
Why do you need something like that?
But they have Asian student unions. They have Jewish student unions. They have all kind of
Did
different.
they have white
unions.
student union?
They need student union. They own the whole school. So they.
But the kids
there
didn't
were
own
no-
the school. The kids didn't.
But I'm
own it.
saying there's nothing. I don't think there's nothing wrong
It's
with having
amazing that
a
you think this way.
segregated, population of students who just want to study together or work together or to be able
Would
to.
you
build
be in support of a white student union?
Yeah, of course.
It would be okay with you?
Yeah, why
Oh, no.
not?
But most blacks don't feel that way.
I think all cultures should be able to segregate and to be able to work within their cultures and network within their own cultures. Absolutely.
Does racism exist?
I believe racism does exist.
And where's the
absolutely.
proof of that?
You just see it all over in the country. That we're proof of it. In terms
What-
of just
what do I see?
Disproportionate in the economics with black people.
But that has nothing to do with racism.
It does. Racism is about power. It's about who's in control. And black people can't be racist because we're not in control. We're not in control of the educational system, some of the social organizations and things that run this country. We're not in control. Racism is about power.
But you would
What
be in
race is
control of your own life if you had good parents, if they taught you how to be independent, if they taught you how to build, how to take care of. I've noticed that the reason I left where I lived over there in the Crenshaw district is that once the white people left, because once I moved there, when I first moved there, it was mostly whites. But once they left, as they did in Gary, Indiana, and other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto. A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket, so I got out. But if blacks had more character and they were taking care of themselves and being responsible and buying land and teaching their
But that
children,
has to be taught.
then so that has nothing to do with racism.
But that has to, of course, that has to be taught.
So it's not racist. It's not white people's fault that you're not teaching your children to do that.
No, but it's not. If the
that true?
parents don't know,
They
if
don't
the parents,
know.
If, so-
But
if
that's
the,
not
if the
white
parents
people's
don't
fault,
know, but if they go into some of these institutions, these predominantly white institutions, they are targeted. They don't have the same opportunities because of their color. It's true. I mean,
So then why go in there then? Why not go to all black school if you
some
feel
people
that?
do choose to do that.
I'm sorry?
Some people do choose. That's
Well, why
what
you see a lot of these black kids going to these white universities, and then they force their way in by saying, I need affirmative action. Once they get in, now they crying racism. Why do you want to force your way in with the people you think are your enemies, and you're still complaining once you get there?
I don't think people are forcing their way. Does
They are.
affirmative action even
action
exist?
is forced based on color.
Does affirmative action even exist? Are people getting in based on affirmative?
Remember when we were having dinner and the lights in the house went dark and then came back up for a moment? We all looked at each other and thought, what just happened there? Well, of course, when we turned on the television, we found out what happened. Huge power outage.
Yes.
And New York City, whereas upstate, the lights just went down and came back on. In New York City, the city went black for a whole night.
Yes.
And you write that night the crime rate was lower than usual, 1965. Second blackout, very similar event, takes place in July 1977. And you write again, New York City was again dark throughout the night, but now there was widespread looting and arson.
Yes.
65 people behaved themselves in New York City in the dark.
Yes.
And in 70, so what happens in those 12 years?
This was one of the many things that turned to the worst in the 1960s. There's a whole slew of them. Steven Pinker has a book about international murder rates, and he said the general trend over the centuries is for the murder rate to go down, but in the 1960s the rate did a U-turn, as he put it. It turned went right up, and this was common across Western societies.
And it is because of
the same vision out there.
And the vision. So I'm trying to, I guess one thing I'm trying to get at here is the extent to which. How does it work itself out? Are the cops, because of this new social vision between 1965, people know that if they try looting or arson, the cops will come right at them?
No.
There's
only so much the cops can do. The first line of defense is morality and the law as a statement of what the principles are. You delegitimize that, and all you've got are the police. There aren't that many police. You could double the number of policemen, and if you destroy the morality, you're not getting anywhere.
So in 1965, people who'd grown up, let's see, 65, that's going to be dominated by people who'd been through, the adults in 65 remember the Depression.
Yes.
They remember the Second World War.
Yes.
They've had the experience of rebuilding the country
Yes.
in the 1950s, and they take for granted what we would now term traditional morality. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
You just don't steal things.
Yes.
You don't destroy property.
Yes.
So what?
No, another example,
Yeah.
those exchange buffet restaurants that I mentioned.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I
This is-
actually
this
remember
is-
going to those. And the
So
exchange
just
buffet.
explain what's going
The
on.
exchange buffet, you go in and you go through the line and pick up your own food, and then you bring your dishes over to be there, and then you come to the cashier and you tell the cashier how much you owe.
And there were 70 some of these restaurants, there were a lot of them in New York.
Dozens.
Dozens. All right.
All right, and they lasted for 78 years. In the 1960s, they collapsed because people no longer were honest.
All right.
In England, it was even more dramatic because they really sort of set the standard for self-controlled societies. And of course, if you have a lot of self-control, you don't need a lot of government control.
Right.
But if you don't have it, the government is not going to be enough by itself. And the government itself is often tainted, as it were, by these same ideas that for example, in London in 1954, there were a grand total of 12 armed robberies in the city of London that year, at a time when anybody could buy a shotgun with no questions asked. Fast forward a couple of decades, and they're at 1,400 armed robberies in London, despite some of the most strict gun control laws in the world.
Got it. I'm still struck. What do we make about the speed with which society changes? Again, you've got what I love about the two blackouts is because they're two snapshots. They're almost literally what do people get up to when they think nobody's looking, when the lights go out. And it's just a dozen years between good behavior, people helping each other out in this difficult night, and terrible behavior where they're looting and setting fire to property. And how is it that ideas, the wrong ideas, can percolate through, can so change behavior in such a brief period of time?
Well, it was going. I mean, these ideas weren't invented in the 1960s,
right?
But the number of people who progressively moved towards those ideas greatly increased, and the whole political and intellectual scene was very different.
Oh, I'm feeling better than ever.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm all right.
Are you racist?
Am I what?
What do you think of these people now? Why? Why you stay here?
Are you racist? Am I racist?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a racist. Why do you ask that?
Well,
why is it that people who stand up for America and who want to protect our own borders, why are we always trying to be backed up with the racist thing? I'm standing here with a black man. If I was a racist, this is my brother right here. If I'm standing with him, how can I be a racist?
Are you a racist?
No.
So why would you ask him is he a racist?
Well, let me see.
Why would you ask that question?
Why you stay here?
And you asking him because he's white and you want to get away with this racist remark. Are you a racist?
No.
So why is it that he a racist because he's standing up for the country?
Do you like the Latin people? Do you like them?
Do you like them? No. Do you like them?
Yeah, I
like America?
People.
Do you like America?
Yeah.
Then what's the problem? You should be out here picking it with us. That's a dumb question to ask. You're asking that question so you can use it on your program to make him look like a racist. Why don't you ask me am I racist? Because I'm black, right? I love America too, and I think these illegal aliens need to be shipped back to their country. So why is that racist? You're a racist for asking him that question.
Thank you, Jesse.
And you're only doing it because he's white, and that's what you're going to show on your report tonight. You shouldn't play that kind of game. That's a dumb question.
Shame on you.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yes.
You're in America taking advantage of all the benefits that America has to offer, and your only comment, are you a racist? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Are you here legally?